Hello, Carol.
Hello, you.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much.
Last time we
Thank you
spoke...
for having me.
No, thank you for coming. Don't ever say that. We want you here. Actually, I think the audience would rather you were here all the time and I wasn't. So
I doubt that very much.
The last time that we spoke, it was before the election.
Yes, it was.
Are you pleased with the result?
We eviscerated the Tories. They had their worst result in their political history. Get in there. I'm very happy. Although I was disappointed they got as many as 121 seats.
Not a great result, you could say.
No, it's the worst in their entire history.
Well, should we talk about a couple of the people
Can we
who've
just
now
laugh
gone?
for 5 minutes?
We can. We can. Let's talk about a couple of people who have gone. The first one, Jonathan Gullis.
Yeah.
Do you miss him?
Well, you have to say that there are some that you kind of think, it was good sport, like jabbing away at them, because they always rose to the bait. Mm-hmm. So he was one of them. I don't miss him. No, I don't miss him at all.
No, I'm cutting it there. I'm leaving it that you do miss him. I'm going to play you a quick clip.
Yeah, go on.
In places like Smallthorne, where we sadly see scumbags who fly tip their filth in our community. In Crowbridge, where scroats deal and shoot up their drugs, wreaking havoc on our community. And in Tunstall, where savages and their antisocial behaviour causes mayhem for local businesses and local people.
So in that clip there, we heard Jonathan Gullis refer to his constituents in Stoke-on-Trent as scumbags, scroats and savages. Now, Carol, do you think that's a good way to refer to someone's constituents?
To your own constituents? I mean, what planet? On what planet did he think he was? I mean, I know. I want people to vote for me, so I'm just going to insult them in the worst way possible. Or was he trying to do his own constituency culture war?
What do you think that says about the Conservatives or a Conservative MP, if they can use that sort of language about the people?
As you won't remember, you're too young. Tom O'Connor, the Scouse comedian, used to say, "Oh, do you want a bit of constructive criticism? You crap." And that's what I'd say to the Tories.
Fantastic.
You crap. No, he didn't say that to me. That was one of his lines.
I didn't think he would have said that about you.
Oh, I love Tom O'Connor.
No one's ever said that about you, Carol.
Yeah.
Should we move on to Liz Truss?
Must we?
Another casualty. Although she is now a Sunday Times bestseller, apparently.
Is she?
Apparently.
Oh, wow.
In December, I'll be in Beijing, opening up new pork markets.
It was great, though, that night, wasn't it, when she refused to go on the stage, and then where was she? And then she was like, I'm not going to talk. It was just the most disingenuous kind of losing mentality ever. She was just awful. She was awful to the end, wasn't she? Let's be honest.
I don't know. The mini budget might have been quite good in some people's eyes.
No, but she just carried it on right to the end. She lost a majority of over 26,000 votes. How do you do that? It's quite spectacular, really, when you think about it.
But there were still people that did vote for her that night. Why do you think they did that?
I don't know. I mean, sometimes you wonder. Yeah, you do wonder.
Would you say she was your least favourite Prime Minister that we've had in recent years?
No.
Who's at the top?
Johnson.
And it looks from what you've told us in answer to Mr. Costa's questions that they did not amount to much at all.
No, so first of all, I think, great respect, Chair, if you're talking about the December the 18th, 2020 event, I don't know, there's some confusion. I was not there.
That's one of the three.
I was not there.
You were there.
And if you look at the statement that I made in the House of Commons, and because this was the relevant issue, because the Allegra video related to the December the 18th event, the Leader of the Opposition's questions the previous week related to the December the 18th event, I was answering about the December the 18th event, because that was the matter in question. I had received, as I said, repeated assurances by different people and at more than one occasion and more than one person that the event was in accordance with the rules.
Boris Johnson, absolutely 100%, yeah.
Why is that?
Well, where do we begin? Boris Johnson would be my least favourite because he lied at a time when everyone was in lockdown. He was just corrupted. He corrupted the system. He was the very, very worst. He lied about everything. And how did we end up like that? How did that happen? You know, this wonderful country that I've spent many more than 60 years in now. How did it come to that? So, no, Johnson easily. Truss was not amusing. Truss was appalling, but at least she was only there for a short period of time, as we know.
You've been one of the campaigners or activists, you could say, who've actually really pointed out...
Activists,
yes.
I love that.
Who've really sort of shone a light on the cost of living crisis and how that has affected people. How do you think that Liz Truss's legacy is affecting people now?
Well, it still is, isn't it? You know, there are a lot of people who've been on fixed-rate mortgages that are coming to a close now, and then that's going to go up. And the thing that, you know, inflation obviously is down from its peak, but what would have cost £10, let's say, on average in 2020, largely due to what she did, now would cost you £12 or £13. Prices aren't going down, it's just the rate at which they're going up is less than it was. And, you know, you see people suffering, you know, people who had a little bit of savings, they're gone, it's gone. And people are suffering, and they will continue to suffer for a long time, I'm afraid.
Mm. But when you hear someone like Keir Starmer telling us that we've got painful months ahead,
yeah,
do you think the country can take it?
There was a piece last weekend about Labour MPs are saying he's got to look more joyous about things. But I've met Rachel Reeves a number of times, and she's very seriously minded. She's hugely intelligent. I think she's made some basic errors in terms of the message going out, particularly to do with the winter fuel allowance. Because I wanted to see taxes on the wealthy first. And I understand why she would say, I'm going to cut the winter fuel allowance for wealthy pensioners. I get that, but they went in far too low to cut it from 10 million pensioners, absolutely far too low. And I wonder who's advising her in terms of the political message, really, on that. Because if that was something that was going to come in 2 years' time, I want to see private equity managers not having the carried interest rate of 28%, but paying 45% like every bugger else has to, who's earning a lot of money. I want to see a wealth tax. I want to see the COVID Corruption Commissioner in place. I want money back there. I want to see all of those things before I see anything that is making those people who, you know, are finding the cost of living crisis still has hit them difficult, and that they're hit by a Labour government. Yeah, I worry about that.
Mm. So when Keir Starmer was talking about the broader shoulders taking on a bit more of the burden, that's something that you would agree with?
As long as the broader shoulders are those who are in offshore tax havens, as long as they are those people who have public sector contracts who aren't delivering on those public sector contracts, as long as it is the right people who are being brought into the system that the rest of us have to live by, and not those who are vulnerable and suffering already. Yes, as long as those are the people with the broad shoulders.
Mm. Let's do another clip, shall we? So this is Priti Patel here announcing the Rwanda plan.
The problem that we have with illegal migration, and we should be very clear about this, is that the majority of people are not fleeing persecution. They are asylum shopping, and that is why they should be claiming asylum in other countries.
Priti Patel, what are your impressions?
Is she one of... I mean, you know the names of the people who are up for Tory leadership. Is she one of them?
She is up for it, yes.
Oh, Lord above. Sometimes you think, oh, really? I mean, so this is 6 of the 121, and she's one of them who's going forward.
So we've got Priti Patel, Mel Stride, Robert Jenrick, Kemi Badenoch, James Cleverly, and I've missed one. I think I've only said 5. Tom Tugendhat is the 6th. Any of those take your fancy?
Oh, do you know, I couldn't be less interested, really. Except that the 2029 election will be critical for your lifetime. And if they're the one, any one of those leading the Conservative Party, what are they going to do? Is Bad Enoch going to go to reform, or is she going to do some kind of devil's pact with reform? I mean, that's what I worry about. I genuinely worry about that. Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk this morning. So I need to make this non-time specific. There's been a lot of talk around the leadership election about, culture wars. So Kemi Badenoch, she's been speaking about Doctor Who. She's not a big fan of... She's very concerned, Carol.
Oh, my God.
It's been...
They get no better, do they? I mean, they really get no better. Russell T Davies, who wrote... I brought Doctor Who back as a showrunner on it. Oh, I've got to message him later. That's hilarious. What's the problem with Doctor Who? What now?
I think that it's become too woke. I think that's what she's concerned about.
Oh, jeepers creepers.
Well, the British people, they don't want woke Doctor Who anymore, Carol. That's how they're going to feed their families.
In spite of it getting like great ratings and all of that.
Yep.
I mean, they are just absurd, these Tories. They are ridiculous. Why are they even given a platform? Don't start me off on the political class. I mean, it is so out of touch, so disconnected with most people in this country. Why do we even give them airtime? They don't deserve it. They really don't.
On Priti Patel and the Rwanda scheme.
Oh, yeah. The now defunct Rwanda scheme, which cost £700 million, according to Yvette Cooper.
So you don't think it was a good use of Priti Patel's time or the country's money to put in nearly £1 billion into
and
Rwanda?
how many? There were 4 volunteers who went.
Yes.
Wow. They could have bought them a Gatelier jet each, couldn't they, for that?
I don't know. I'd
And
love
sent
one,
them
though.
yeah, apparently, I think. Yeah.
Yes, they could have done. James Cleverly, his leadership bid, he's actually going to bring the Rwanda plan back. So that's something to look forward to.
It's like the Rwanda hokey cokey, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But didn't they get the message that people didn't want them? They were banging on about all of that leading up to the election. And they lost badly. The worst, excuse me while I repeat this, the worst political result in the Conservative Party history. I know what we do is we do exactly the same again, expect a different answer. That is the definition of insanity, which probably is kind of accurate for them really nowadays, isn't it?
So do you think then that Labour were right to kick Rwanda out at the moment that they went into office?
Well, obviously, yes. Yes.
What do you think it said about the Conservative government that they were willing to deport potential asylum seekers to Rwanda?
They were just generating culture wars, weren't they? It was, let's blame those people over there. I mean, we could be here all day if you want me to go through the numbers. But
I've got time, but I don't think you have.
I don't think I have, no, sadly. It's just wearing even thinking about the last government. I do find it genuinely tiring because they used their right-wing media buddies to promote all these culture wars, and they haven't learned a lesson because they lost in the worst way they ever have. And yet they're going back to it. I genuinely don't get it. I mean, is it what? Past the brain cell round the shadow cabinet? Or what's going on there? Because they've run out of ideas. That's the problem. And all they want to do is generate these false issues.
Do you think that's the only way that they can
well,
keep
it's because they get
relevant?
the headlines, and then it's clickbait for the Mail, the Express, the Telegraph, all of that. And it seems that is really what they find more important than actually talking to the public, I think.
I'm going to ask you about one of your favourite figures of the last couple of years. I'm going to ask you about Michelle Mone.
I wasn't trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes, and I regret and I'm sorry for not saying straight out, yes, I am involved. My family have gone through hell with the media over, my career, and I didn't want another big hoo-ha in the press and my family to be involved in it.
The two contracts in total came to a value of £202 million, and MedPro made a return on its investment of about realistically about 30%.
So about £60 million or...
Yeah.
So that's Michelle Mone there. She was known for using the government's priority lane with MedPro and PPE, and through that she was able to supply a lot of vital PPE to our NHS service, Carol.
Yes. Oh, well, there's almost an entire chapter in my new book about Michelle Mone. It's going to be very interesting to see what the National Crime Agency do in the next months about that. So the National Crime Agency got involved. Obviously, everything was denied, as you know. PPE and MedPro got 2 contracts, one for just over 80 million for masks, and then a second one almost immediately for 122 million for gowns, which were unusable. And there is now a court case where the Department of Health and Social Care is taking PPE and MedPro to court for the 122 million, plus interest, plus storage, but it's about 150 million altogether. And it was at that point that Mone and her second husband, Doug Barrowman, then said, well, actually, we in a Scottish accent, which I'm not very good at. I'm good at Scouse accents, but I'm not very good at Scottish accents. Actually, yes, we were involved in this after all, having spent years denying it and threatening to sue people and lying to their lawyers and lying about their lawyers, and so it goes on. So, and I think her case, their case, is one which is very symbolic of the Conservatives in power, corrupted to the core and corruptible without even batting an eyelid. So, in my book I talk about what I want is an independent corruption commissioner permanently to look at all public sector contracts. I don't trust Westminster. I don't trust the system. I just don't trust it. It is a defunct system. It is not fit for purpose, and it proved that almost on a daily basis.
Because it's very interesting that successive governments have cracked down, I'm doing air quotes if you're listening to this podcast, on, again, quote-unquote, benefits grounders. So they'll have huge departments in which they sort of chase people for £10 accidentally extra claimed or £20 here. But they don't seem to go after the £2 million that might have been wrongly allocated.
Funny that, isn't it? It's really odd. And how certain famous brands are based offshore. Most hedge funds are based offshore. Nothing to see here. Private equity managers who earn just between hundreds of them earn billions of pounds a year, and they pay 28%, not 45% as his income, because there was a deal struck with HMRC in the 1980s when private equity was kind of starting up. And yet, one of the things that you talk about, so-called scroungers, is Dan Needle, you know, the tax lawyer, who is wonderful. If you don't follow Dan Needle, you should be doing. And Dan did a piece of work where he looked at, I can't remember, it was for 2 or 3 years, HMRC fines for people for late filing. You know, you meant to file on January the 31st, your kind of self-assessment for the tax office. And if people filed late, they would be penalised, and they would have a penalty of something like £100, sometimes up to £1,000. And he went through it all and found that 40% of those, so it's around about £40 million in this particular year, was paid by people who had filed late, but they didn't even earn enough money to pay tax.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. And it just shows how unequal and corrupted our system is. And I worry. I genuinely worry. I mean, in the Transparency Index, you know, we're way down. And I think there are a lot of things which the Tories have buried in there, which will be found out in the coming months and years. Like the Rwanda thing, you know, everyone thought it was 500 million, no, actually it was 700 million. Like the Office for Budget Responsibility have said last week, you know, actually there was £5 billion that they didn't account for in, I think it was the month of June, that they just hid. They shouldn't even be in a position where people are talking to them. They're disgraceful.
What I worry about, and I suppose you have already addressed this, with the person that you want to oversee the contracts, public contracts going forward, there doesn't seem to be any accountability. So £5 billion wasn't reported to the OBR. Well, what's the penalty for that?
There is none. And the code of conduct is just not good enough. I mean, there is so much that happens in Westminster. House of Lords, well, it should just... Again, I talk about it in the book about all these different reforms that I want to see. Tax reform, duty of candour, codes of conduct, conflicts of interest. Nil. No ifs, no buts, none whatsoever. Not just for primary contractors, but for secondary contractors as well. And nobody should receive a public sector contract, a government contract, if they don't pay UK tax. I mean, you would imagine... You know, I've got long lists of these things that I say, but you would imagine that all these things are in place, and they're not. And it's no wonder that there is this enormous disconnect. 52% of people voted who could have registered and voted. That's it, 52%. At a time when there was, you know, we had Partygate, we had the lettuce, we had, you know, the crashing of the economy, we had people laughing in the face of the public, we had the vulnerable being punished, we had all of that. We had election scandals, we had Rishi Sunak coming back from the D-Day celebrations a few hours early. We had all of that. We had, and yet only half the people voted. That is the scale of the disconnect.
You think it's a lack of faith that people have in the system?
Well, I think broadcast has a lot to do with that as well. I think the media has a responsibility in that. And I spoke about it at the Edinburgh TV Festival. I delivered the alternative McTaggart lecture. I called it Television Snobbery in London. And there is this sense when you live outside of London that the Westminster bubble, it's the same people talking to the same people. Like James Cleverly, he should be called out for stuff, not spoken to as though he's just all perfectly normal. Kevin Badenoch talking about Doctor Who should be laughed off the face of television. I mean, it is just absurd to a normal observer that they're still spoke to in a deferential manner. It's madness.
I suppose a lot of the issue that we have at the moment with the Westminster bubble is that a lot of these politicians get to decide whether you attend events or don't as the press.
Yeah.
There has been many conversations about whether the press is truly free in this country anymore. I mean, does it concern you that...
Do you know what the best thing the press could do?
Mm-hmm.
James cleverly go, right, I'm going to, was it the War Rooms?
It was, yeah.
I'm going to announce my candidacy as potential leader of the Conservative Party. And no one turns up. That would be the best thing that could happen. Nobody cares.
Well, I've gone now, Carol. What do I do?
No, but literally, nobody turned up. Best thing that could happen.
I agree. Let's finish by talking about... Oh, no, actually, I wanted to ask you, quickly about going back to accountability that we were speaking about. What do you make about a written constitution for Parliament?
In what way?
What do you think about the old boys club promise of Parliament? So Boris Johnson, for example, when he lied to the House, he is meant to come back and correct the record, but nothing forces him to. There are some campaign groups who say if we had a written constitution, he would have to come back.
I don't know about the legalities, but again, in my plan for change, I talk about that. So if somebody has lied in Parliament, sometimes people admittedly will say, oh, we spent 200 million on this. And that's what they believe because that's what their civil servant has told them, right? And then they have to adjust that because actually, oh no, we got that wrong. I get that, that's a number.
A mistake.
So that'd be a genuine error, I would call that. But for those who deliberately have lied and manipulated in the House of Commons, and it's found that they got a number wrong or a fact wrong, then they should, within 48 hours, have to go back to the House and put it right. If they don't, they're fined. And if they have 2 fines, they're out.
They're out?
Yes!
But
yes!
Carol, we might start having...
Yes! Because if you did that, well, let's look at the betting scandal, right? So one of the close protection officers, he was arrested. I can't remember whether he was charged or not because there was so much going on at that time. But the MPs, and the candidate, the MP, Craig Williams, and then the other woman who was a candidate for, I think, Bristol North West, Laura Sanders was her name, something like that. She, no, nothing to see here. It's like, and as the public, we see that. We go, well, hang on. How come they're in a position of power and they're not accountable, and yet somebody much lower down the scale is? It's wrong, Ava. And it's very simply put right. Very simply. But they operate as this political elite and they can do what they like. I mean, Boris Johnson even tried to change the ministerial code of conduct so that, it didn't matter and there would be absolutely no punishment. He even tried to rewrite that. Change number 10 in my book is ban all old Etonians from ever being a part of cabinet until at least 2050.
A hard and fast rule?
Absolutely, because it's got worse, not better. So the last, 10 years or so, I can read you out the list, can't remember all the names now. It's all evidenced in the book, about the effect and influence of Eton on our politics and positions, not only in politics, in the church, in the military, everywhere. This is a school that only has a couple of hundred kids that go every year. I mean, it's absurd. Since 1955, a third of our prime ministers went to the same school. And to go to that school, you have to have a penis.
But you're buying influence, aren't you? The parents of those children are buying influence and buying by sending their kids there.
Why are we putting up with it?
Well, why not disband the school?
No, let the school carry on.
But just clip its wings.
Yeah, stamp on it. Yeah.
All right, Carol, we've gone through many of the problems. If people want to read the solutions, they'll read it in...
Yes, in my book, which will make you laugh out loud in places. The diary bit is very funny. Have you managed to have a skim through it? Yeah. Did you laugh out loud?
Yeah, and I was also very complimented that you put me in the back.
I put a good people to follow list. And lovely Ava and also PoliticsJOE are in that because I think they're great. But there are bits in there in the diary element that will make you laugh out loud. And everything is evidenced, as you might imagine.
But it very much is your humour. It reads like you. Like you're speaking.
Yeah.
Well, as it should, I suppose, because it's your book.
And then it's not a manifesto, but it's it's a plan for change, because there are some huge changes that we should have, including tax reform, electoral reform, all sorts of different things. And it's meant to be, that section of it is about, we need to talk about things. We don't have to shout at each other all the time. I mean, Tories just want a culture war. But actually, if you don't agree with me on this, well, let's talk about it, because then we come out at the other end. But I've written it for people who wouldn't normally buy a book about politics, because a lot of politics is spoken about in a way that tries to exclude the vast majority. You're a bit stupid if you don't know about that. You're a bit stupid if you don't know that the tea rooms are this, that, and the other. Why should you know that? I don't know what neoliberalism is. And I deliberately haven't looked it up because I don't want to have a conversation with somebody who puts it in a conversation, because they should be explaining what they mean, not using intellectual phrases, in my opinion.
I like that. So it's about accessibility.
Totally. And that's what this book is about. What's politics got to do with me? That's what I show you.
Fantastic. And it's out now.
It is out now.